بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين وبعد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. Alhamdulillah, continuing along, now we're on chapter 4, Bab al-Wudhu. Last week we talked about Qada al-Haja, or the etiquettes of using the lavatory, and now we're going on. So he talked basically about the waters we're supposed to use, to purify ourselves, then the containers that are permissible to use to hold the water, right? And then breaking or using the restroom, which is an act of nullifying the wudu. Now he moves into the act of wudu itself, how to purify yourself for salah. And in the beginning of the class we said there was 3 forms of purification, basically. The ritual purification, which is, wudu or ghusl or tayammum, to remove ahdath, the ritual impurities. Then there is physical purification, which is removing the filth or impurities from your body or your clothing or the place of worship. And then there's spiritual purification, which is purifying the heart, first and foremost from the shirk, and also from the disease of the heart in terms of like hating for improper reasons or having jealousy or lower lustful desires and these type of things. You want to purify your heart from that. And the book obviously in fiqh focuses more on the first 2, and the other one is for classes of tazkiyah, inshallah, that we covered in our first book that we talked about, Da' wa Dawa. Inshallah in the future books we'll study as well. So Bab al-Wudu. Wudu comes from the word wada'a, which is like beautiful or nice looking, basically. And on the Day of Judgment the believers will have that upon their faces, that light from the wudu that you made in the dunya. You will have the light on the Day of Judgment, from that, and it beautifies you even more. Also, even in the dunya, subhanAllah, the ones who are always protecting and consistent in their worship and wudu, you see a light upon their face, even in the dunya. The believers, they have a certain glow about them, a certain nice, attractive nature from the worship that they do with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And they say that the closer you are to Allah, the more beauty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala puts upon you. If you're in constant prayer and dhikr and remembering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you're in communication with the Most High. So therefore, that beauty reflects upon the righteous people. So that's the linguistic meaning of the wudu. Islamically, it's basically الغسل والمس بأعضاء مخصوصة بنية رفع الحدث. Basically, washing and wiping certain parts of the body with the intention of removing ritual impurities. That's the Shar'i definition. So linguistically, wudu means to be beautiful or nice looking, and then in the Islamic definition, it's to washing or wiping certain parts of the body to remove physical impurities with a specific intention, right? The Imam, he goes on, he says, لا يصح الوضوء ولا غيره من العبادات إلا أن ينويه لقول رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم إنما الأعمال بالنيات. That wudu and other acts of worship are not valid unless one makes the proper intention, because the Prophet ﷺ statement, verily all action is done by intention, or deeds are judged by their intention. The asl in this bab, the foundation of wudu, is the ayat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا إِذَا قُمْتُمْ إِلَى الصَّلَاةِ فَاغْسِلُوا وُجُوهَكُمْ وَأَيْدِيَكُمْ إِلَى الْمَرَافِقِ وَامْسَحُوا بِرُؤُوسِكُمْ وَأَرْجُلُكُمْ إِلَى الْكَعْبَيْنِ. Right? Allah, He says, O you who believe, if you get up for the salat, wash your faces and your hands and wipe your head and wash your feet. Right? That's the ayat, that's the asl, the foundation of the order of wudu for us as believers in the Quran. And the Prophet ﷺ, he said, إِنَّمَا أُمِرْتُ بِالْوُضُوءِ عِنْدَ قِيَامِ لِلصَّلَاةِ. Verily I have been ordered with wudu when I am getting up to offer salat. Right, so that's the Quran and that's the Sunnah, and it's ijma' of the ulama and the ummah, that basically wudu is an obligatory deed for getting for praying or removing the minor ahdath, ritual impurities. So you can offer prayer, read Quran and make tawaf, right, and do certain acts of ibadat. So those are the 3 asl for the foundation of wudu. The Imam here is saying that the acts of worship are not valid without having intention. So that's the first requirement of the wudu, to have the proper intention. عبادة here he says لا وضوء ولا غيره من العبادات لا يصح الوضوء ولا غيره من العبادات إلا أن ينويه. So ibadah, no worship is correct without having the proper intention, right? For any deed to be accepted, you have to have correct intention that you're doing for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and you're doing it in accordance to the Sharia, Islamic legislation, right? So if you're missing any of those two pillars, your action cannot be accepted. It won't be accepted with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You might get reward for the dunya, but in the akhirah, it won't be for naught. you know, just like the niyyah, you have to have for two reasons. First of all, to do it for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and second of all, to distinguish the types of worship you're doing, right? So when we have wudhu, you have to have the niyyah that you're doing it for the sake of Allah to lift ritual impurities off of yourself, as opposed to just washing up out of habit. So if a person just washes, and he's not having any intention whatsoever, the wudhu is not correct. So the Imam is saying that, from the first requirements or the necessity of intention when you're doing the wudhu. This is according to the Jumhur of the ulama, the Malikiyya, the Shafi'iyya, and the Hanabila. The Hanafiyya have a different opinion in terms of the niyyah for wudhu, and we won't get into that. We'll just stick with the majority opinion for this issue, that basically you should have the proper niyyah in making the wudhu for your wudhu to be correct. Also for the requirement of salat, the Prophet ﷺ said, لا يقبل الله صلاة أحدكم إذا أحدث حتى يتوضأ. The Prophet said that Allah will not accept the salah of any of you if he has broken his ritual purification until he has made wudhu. Right? That's the other hadith that shows that. Also, the Prophet ﷺ, he said, الطهور شطر الإيمان, that purity is half of faith. And some scholars, they interpret faith in this hadith as salah, like it's half of salat. And also the Prophet ﷺ said in another hadith, مفتاح الصلاة الطهور, the key to opening the salat, to starting the salat, is tuhur, purification, right? So your salat is not accepted if your wudu is not correct, and your wudu is not correct if you don't have the proper intention, right? So they all build upon each other. Doing the act of intention or having the proper niyyah in all your ibadat is like a pillar in the deen, right? Because when you do certain acts, why are you doing it? Like, are you doing it for the praise of the people, or for some position in society, or are you doing it for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? Like that same act can put one person into Jannah and the other person into the hellfire. The Prophet ﷺ, he said, the three first people that will get thrown into the hellfire is the martyr, the one who spends, money for the poor people, and the scholar or the reciter of the Quran, right? And all of them will say, or the reason that they were thrown in hellfire is because they did it for the sake of the people, right? So when you do an act of worship, always try to have istihdar an-niyyah, which means basically being cognizant of your intention. Why am I doing this act, right? For example, a beggar comes and asks for money, and you just give him some money, and you're not really thinking of doing it for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but maybe because you want to get rid of him, or you're embarrassed, or you want to show the people that you're not stingy, and you give him money, but you're not really having the intention in your heart that I'm doing this for the sake of Allah. So you get the reward in terms of the people thinking you're not stingy, or you get him off your back if you want to get rid of him, for example, but you're not getting the ajr or the reward from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala because you're not really doing it for his sake. But if you change your intention, like, I'm doing this for the sake of Allah to help another person, and I'm giving this charity for the sake of Allah, then you get that reward, right? And sometimes it could be such a small amount, but your niyyah was so pure, it will become like mountains on the Day of Judgment, right? So the first part of this chapter, he's saying to have the correct intention for the wudu. And we're saying in all ibadat are not accepted except with the proper intention. So inshallah, when you're doing wudu, when you're doing salah, always try to have that recognition of the proper intention. Then he's going to start now with a description of wudu in general, and he does this with salah as well. He gives you like the nicest picture of the wudu, and then he breaks it down into the arkan and then or the sunan, right? What's obligatory upon you and what's sunnah, what's extra. And it's a nice manhaj basically because it gives you a double shot at knowing what the wudu is in its details, and then what do I have to do and what is just like recommended. Because sometimes you might not have enough water to make a complete wudu, right? And if you don't know what's mandatory upon you or what's sunnah, you might not be able to make a complete wudu. Whereas if you did know what's wajib and what's not, you can make a complete wudu. So that's one of the reasons, amongst other reasons why we should know. So he starts off, after you have the correct intention, he says, ثُمَّ يَقُولُ بِسْمِ اللَّهِ. You should say in the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So in the name of Allah, you're doing this wudu, right? And the Prophet ﷺ said in a hadith, لا وضوء لمن لا يذكر اسم الله عليه, that there's no wudu for the one who does not mention Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's name upon it. And the scholars explain it. There are some scholars that say that Bismillah is wajib, that you have to say it for the wudu. But the stronger opinion, according to the other scholars, is not wajib, but it's highly recommended. Because there's other narrations that the Prophet ﷺ didn't mention that when he was teaching some of the Sahaba. And then the ayat that we just read, that's asl, a foundation for this act of worship, Allah didn't mention it in that ayat, right? It says, إِذَا قُمْتُمْ إِلَى الصَّلَاةِ فَاغْسِلُوا وُجُوهَكُمْ. It didn't say Bismillah first. And the Prophet ﷺ told the Sahabi, تَوَضَّأْ كَمَا أَمَرَكَ اللَّهِ, make wudu as Allah has ordered you. Right, so the scholars derive from this that it's not wajib, because if it had been wajib, the Prophet ﷺ would have said, say Bismillah first, or shown in other narrations that you have to say Bismillah all the time, but he didn't do that. So the stronger opinion, it's not obligatory, but it's highly recommended. وَيَغْسِلْ كَفَّيْهِ ثَلَاثًا. Then he washes his hands 3 times. And the hands basically from the wrist into the fingertips, right? You wash it 3 times. Especially if you're waking up from your sleep, or if you don't know where your hands have been, for example, or if your hands are dirty. And this is for the reason of removing filth that you might not know about before you start your wudu. This first ghusl of the yadayn is sunnah, it's not wajib, it's not fard, right? So it's preferred, and you start with that. And then you go on and do the wudu as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has told us and the Prophet ﷺ has told us. The correct way is, after you wash your hands, in general, you rinse your mouth and your nose 3 times. And then you wash your face and your hands from here all the way to the elbow. That first one didn't count as a fard. You must have to start again from here all the way to the elbow. Then wipe over your head, and then wash your feet up to the ankles 3 times. That's what the Prophet ﷺ taught us, and we'll go through it right now. So after you wash your hands 3 times, you do ثم يتمضمض ويستنشق 3 يجمع بينها بغرفة واحدة أو 3. So then you rinse your mouth and your nose 3 times, combining both with 1 handful of water, or 3 separate handfuls, like 6 times total. Both ways are permissible, but the scholars say it's better, the more authentic narrations, is to do it with 1 hand for each, if you're able to do so. If you're not able, then you could do 3 times in the mouth and then 3 times at the nose. But if you're able to, the better way is to do it with 1 handful, both the nose and the mouth, then the next handful, both the mouth and the nose, and then the 3rd handful, the mouth and the nose. Right? That's the better way to do it. So you're not wasting as much water, and it's the sunnah that the Prophet ﷺ used to do most of the time. Madmada is basically like have movement in your mouth with the water, and then spit it out, obviously. Istinshaq is breathing the water into your nostrils, right?
I saw like a tutorial or like a demonstration where they said you can gargle it. Are you supposed to gargle? Is that?
You can gargle, but the main point is to just move the water in your mouth. Yeah, and then the difference of opinion which arises, is it sufficient to just put the water in your mouth, or do you have to move the water? Because if it's sufficient to just put the water in your mouth, you can actually drink it after you finish. But if it's not sufficient, you have to move it around, then you should spit it out. So that's what that point comes in. Sometimes they say it goes back into the throat and then throw it out. But the main point, just putting the water in the mouth and moving it out and then spitting it out, is the best way. And that has like a lot of benefit too, not only for cleaning your mouth, but the nostrils, when you breathe in water up to your nose and cleaning your nasal passage, and you get rid of like a lot of the bacteria and a lot of the excess dirt and stuff like that. So even health-wise, it's something that's beneficial for you, subhanAllah. ثم يغسل وجهه 3 من منابت شعر الرأس إلى من حدر من اللحيين والذقن طولا ومن الأذن إلى الأذن عرضا ويخلل لحيته إذا إن كانت كثيفة وإن كانت تصف البشرة لزمه غسلها. So he said, then you wash your face 3 times from the hairline or the normal hairline, like if I had hair, from the normal hairline down until the chin, right, the bottom of the chin, lengthwise, and to the ear, across from ear to ear, widthwise, right. So this whole area right here should be washed. If you have a thick beard, you can run your fingers through the beard, takhallul. And if you don't have a thick beard, you have to wash the face directly, right? If you don't have a beard at all, obviously you wash the face directly 3 times. ثم يغسل يديه إلى المرفقين ثلاثا ويدخلهما في الغسل. Then you wash your hands, from your hands all the way up to your elbows, and you include the elbows in that ghusl 3 times each. ثم يمسح رأسه مع الأذنين يبدأ بيديه من مقدمه ثم يمرهما إلى قفاه ثم يردهما إلى مقدمه. So then you wipe your head, basically starting from the front and going all the way to the back, to the nape of the neck basically. Then you come back again to the front while you wipe your ears. So going back, wiping the ears, and then coming back. That's the correct way to wipe the head. If you have hair, like it's long hair, you don't have to go all the way back to the end of the hair. You just go to like the nape of the neck. That's why they mentioned nape of the neck, just in case you have longer hair, right? But if you don't have hair, obviously you just go to the end of the hairline, where the hairline would be, and then you go back up again. That's the sunnah, to do it once this way and then once back, and then intermediate wiping in the ears, right? No.
About the washing the forearms.
Mm-hmm.
What is it? I've seen some people, in other words, run their arms underneath the faucet.
Right.
Just putting the arm entirely across and running it back and forth, right? And I was wondering, is it required to actually put the arm like that and have the water just run, or could a person just run the water across the arm?
You can run. You don't. It's not required, obviously. It just, the point is you have to get the water to cover that complete body part, whichever body part you're working on or you're washing at the time. The Malikiya, they require what's called dalk, which is actually rubbing the water into the skin. So that's the better way to do it. Actually, not just letting the water flow over it, but actually to rub your skin. That's to be on the safe side. The Hanabila don't see that as a pillar, but it's recommended. Well, yeah. ثم يغسل رجليه إلى الكعبين ثلاثا ويدخلهما في الغسل ويخلل أصابعهما. Then you wash your feet 3 times up to the ankle, and the ankle is included as well, right? 3 times on the right and the left, and then you can wipe or wash in between the toes. You can do it in between the fingers, in between the toes, and the scholars, they say that's usually if you don't have enough water to make sure that you've covered all your body parts. But if you have enough water and you're sure that the water has reached that part, it's not necessary. Yeah, so socks, we'll get to that chapter, and wiping over the socks. But if you've wore socks or the khuffain after you've made wudu and a state of purification, you can just wipe over them. Yes, after up for the time period of 1 day for the resident and 3 days for the traveler. Then he says, ثم يرفع نظره إلى السماء فيقول أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. Then he says, you look up into the sky and you say the dua, I bear witness there's nobody worthy of worship except Allah, and that Muhammad is his servant and messenger. The looking up in the sky part is not authentic in the narration, but the hadith, the dua, is authentic, that you say the shahada as he is stated here after you make wudu. And there's actually a narration that the Prophet ﷺ said, whoever says that, يفتح له أبواب الجنة الثمانية يدخل أيها شاء أو أيهما أي منها شاء. So basically, when you say this dua with sincerity after your wudu, the 8 doors of heaven are opened up for you. There's a specific, there's 8 doors, all from different types of worship. They all open up for you, and you can enter into any one you want. So it's a nice dua to make after you make your wudu, right? And the other one, some scholars say, Allahumma ja'alni min at-tawabin wa ja'alni min al-mutahhirin. Oh Allah, make me of those who repent to you and make me of those who are pure. Right? But this one in specific, there's a hadith that the Prophet ﷺ said, if you say it after the wudu with sincere intention, Allah will open the 8 gates, the eight doors of Jannah for you, and you can enter to anyone you want. So that's like the wudu in its descriptive mode, from including the obligations and the recommended acts together. The Imam just gave you a nice picture of the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ when he made wudu. Right? Now he's going to go and say what's wajib and what's like preferred, what's obligatory and what's preferred. So the mandatory acts, al-wajib min dhalika. Al-wajib in the Arabic language is something like that becomes mandated, right? Wajabat. In the usul definition, ما يثاب فاعله ويعاقب تاركه. That the one who does it gets rewarded and the one who leaves it gets punished, right? And then another definition is that ما أمر به الشارع أمر جازما. That which the Sharia has commanded with a strong command. You know, there's the differences of mustahab and wajib. Wajib is like a weaker command, an easier command, and mustahab is like an easier, not emphasized command, and wajib is an emphasized command, that you have to do it. So that's what wajib is, and he's saying the wajib acts for the wudu. What's the first one we talked about already? Before that. The niyyah, yes, intention. That's the first one, a niyyah. And then the second, غسل مرة ما خلا الكفين. Washing each body part 3 times. At least 1 time. That's the fard, that's the wajib. 1 time each body part that we mentioned, 1 time. Except the hands, he's saying, because that's the sunnah that you should wash it 3 times. That's an exemption. When you wake up, especially in those days, they didn't have sinks and stuff like that. So they would wash their hands because they don't know what kind of impurities may have gotten on their hands or dirt or something like that. So before they put their hands in the bucket for washing or making wudu or ghusl, they would take scoops out or pour water over their hands and wash it 3 times first to make sure their hands are clean. Then they would go and get the other water to wash the rest of their body. So that's the exemption. But the fard part, you should do it 1 time at least. And then the third part is mash al-ras, wiping over the head. And the fourth obligation is tartib al-wudu ala ma dhakarna, doing it in the order that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has said in the ayah. So what's the first thing for the fard? No, for wajib, like obligatory. Yeah, the face. Yes. يا أيها الذين آمنوا إذا قمتم إلى الصلاة فاغسلوا وجوهكم. And then وأيديكم إلى المرافق وامسحوا برؤوسكم وأرجلكم إلى الكعبين. That's the order that you're supposed to do it. So the Hanabila say you have to do it in order. And then the fifth one is that ولا يؤخر غسل الأعضاء حتى ينشف الذي قبله. That you don't leave washing any part in such that one part becomes dry before the completion of the wudu. So say for example, you're making wudu and a phone call comes, an important phone call, and you go and you start talking on the phone and you haven't completed your wudu, right? And then by the time you get off the phone, you notice that some of your body parts that you washed already have dried up without you completing the whole wudu. The wudu is invalid according to Hanabila. You have to go back and make wudu again, right? If you are in like an abnormal situation in terms of like in the middle of a desert or extremely high heat, and you're making wudu, and as you're making wudu it's drying it, almost instantly, that's exempt from the rule. But in general, if you're like a normal weather, a normal situation, and you're making wudu and you stop long enough for parts to dry, the Hanabila consider that as a violation of the wudu, and you have to go back and make it again. Is that clear? Okay, so those are the 5. Alaykum salam. Those are the 5 mandatory acts of wudu. Okay? So now he's going to go and say what's the recommended acts, the sunan. The first one, sunan is basically ما يثاب عليه فاعله ولا يعاقب تاركه. The one who does it, he gets rewarded for it, and the one that leaves it is not going to get punished. So that's the sunnah. That's the difference between the wajib and the sunnah. Also, if you leave a wajib in the wudu, your wudu is invalid, which will obviously make your salat invalid, right? That's why the Prophet ﷺ said, according to one interpretation of the hadith, the person who did not clean himself properly, he's being punished in the grave, right? Because the scholars say he is not making proper wudu, and for that his salat is not correct. So the wajib, if you leave the wajib, your wudu is not correct, therefore your salat is not correct. The sunnah, if you leave it, is just not as complete or beneficial, but your wudu is still correct. So the first one is the basmala, or saying the tasmiyah, the mentioning the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. As we said, there's a hadith that says, the Prophet ﷺ said, there's no wudu who doesn't mention the name of Allah, but the actions of the Prophet took that down from obligatory to sunnah, right? So in usul of fiqh, if the Prophet ﷺ said something, but he did something different from it, for example, it shows us that it's just preferred to do this act, but not obligatory. So for example, the Prophet ﷺ said, do not drink standing up. But in some situations, the Prophet ﷺ drank standing up. So that shows us it's better to drink sitting down, but in occasions it's okay to stand up and drink. Or do not urinate and was standing up. But we see in some narrations the Prophet ﷺ urinated standing up. So that takes it down from obligatory to like just preferred. Is that clear? So in this situation, the Bismillah, it's preferred because the actions of the ayah and the other hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, he didn't mention it. So it shows us it's preferred but not obligatory upon us. The next one is the ghusl al-kaffayn, washing the hands at the beginning. Many people think that's like the fard, but it's not. So if you wash your hands in the beginning, and you go through the wudu and you don't wash your hands again, you're leaving a fard. You're leaving a rukn, a pillar of the wudu. You have to go back and wash your hands to the elbows for your hands to be counted correctly. Okay, so the first washing is the sunnah. Also, the madmada and istinshaq, on the stronger opinion, you'll find some scholars say that it's part of the face and it's wajib, but the stronger opinion is not. It's the sunnah, it's preferred to wash the mouth and to rinse the nose with the water, right? And what's the proof, do you think, for that it's not part of the face or it's not wajib? I just said it for another thing a couple minutes ago.
Because of the order you mentioned?
Like the ayah that Allah said, and then the Prophet ﷺ said, Tawadda kama amarak Allah, to the Sahabi, make wudu as Allah has ordered you. So in the ayah, the face is mentioned, but the nose and the mouth are not mentioned specifically. So the scholars derive from that, it's not obligatory but preferred. Alright, the fourth one is takhlil al-lahya wal-asabi', putting the fingers through the beard and through the toes and the fingers, like the space in here, right? With the beard, specifically if it's thick, you're supposed to do that. If it's not thick enough, you just wash it as normal. And with the in between the fingers and the toes, if the water is little, you do it to make sure that the water has covered those parts. But if the water is much and you have plenty and you're sure that the water has reached it, it's not necessary. Number 5, mash al-udhunayn, wiping the ears. Again, there's a hadith that says, some scholars don't see it as authentic, but some do, al-udhunayni min al-ra's, that the udhunayn, the ears, are from the head. The correct opinion, again, is it's not exactly from the head, but it's just preferred as well, right? Because the ayah and the actions of the Prophet ﷺ show us that it's not obligatory but preferred. The next sunan is to wash the right before the left. Because Allah, He said, فَاغْسِلُوا وُجُوهَكُمْ وَأَيْدِيَكُمْ إِلَى الْمَرَافِقِ وَامْسَحُوا بِأَرْجُلِكُمْ. Your hands and your feet. He didn't say like right or left in order, so it's kind of like left as that. But from the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, he showed us to start with the right foot, the right side, and do the right parts first. And also the Prophet ﷺ, he used to love doing the good things always starting with the right side first, right? So we just start. The sunnah is to do the right before the left. That's number 6. Number 7, وَالْغُسْلُ ثَلَاثًا ثَلَاثًا وَتُكْرَهُ الزِّيَادَةُ عَلَيْهَا وَالْإِسْرَافُ فِي الْمَاءِ. And it's sunnah to do it 3 times, right? Actually, sometimes you can vary it too. The Prophet ﷺ sometimes will do it 1 time, sometimes 2 times, sometimes 3 times. Sometimes within the wudu itself, you can do all 3 of them. Do 1 part 1, 1 part 2, 1 part 3, right? So it's good to vary it. But the general sunnah is to do it 3 times each for the body parts. And then he says, it's disliked to use a lot of water. And it's also disliked to go above the 3 times. And some scholars say even haram, because you're being wasteful and you're doing khilaf of the sunnah. You have a question?
Yeah, sorry. Maybe I missed it.
The hair you wipe it once. You go from the front to the back and then back again. And then you wipe the ears. Yeah.
Did you mention that or no?
The head, yeah. The head is part, that's fard. That's a
And you
wajib.
have to go through the hair? Like, you have to-
No, you can just wipe over the hair.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But
You
the
don't have to go
beard,
deep.
what's that?
You don't have to go deep with
You don't have to go deep. No, you just wipe over it. Yeah. Even if you're wearing the imama, which we'll talk about in the chapter of mash, wiping over, you can wipe like only part of the head and then wipe the imama. You don't have to actually go into the under the imama. So that's the seventh sunan. And like I said, it's you dislike to use too much water. The Prophet ﷺ used to use like basically less than half a liter for his whole wudu, right? So therefore you shouldn't do more than 3 times because that's a sunnah. Doing more would be kind of an innovation. And the Prophet ﷺ told the Sahaba, even if you were lived like, at the, what do you call it, bed of a river or the bank of a river, you shouldn't waste water, right? So it's very highly encouraged not to waste water in Islam, and it's a gift from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Allah, He does not like israf or wastefulness in general, So inshallah that's one of the sunnahs. And then the Imam, he goes to complete this chapter with the oral hygiene, basically the siwak. ويسن السواك عند تغير الفم وعند القيام من النوم وعند الصلاة لقول رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم لولا أن أشق على أمتي لأمرتهم بالسواك عند كل صلاة. And he says it's recommended to clean the teeth using the siwak when the taste of the mouth has changed, when you have like some type of odors in the mouth, or if you've gotten up from the sleep, or before the prayers, because the Prophet ﷺ said that if it had not been burdensome upon my nation, I would have ordered them with siwak at every salah, right? So in general, siwak there's 2 things. You can interpret it as the action of brushing or moving around something in your mouth, or the actual tree from the Arabian Peninsula that people use, that wooden thing, which has a lot of health benefits to it, by the way. So both are correct. Like even if you use a toothbrush with toothpaste, or some even scholars say just the motion itself, even if a person used their finger, it would be achieving the sunnah of siwak. But some scholars say it's better to use the actual tree from the Arabian Peninsula because of the health benefits to it. But in general, it's just something that can clean your teeth and clean your mouth and change it if you have bad breath, or if you've haven't talked for a while. Sometimes your mouth gets dry, to just like make it more pleasant. He says when you wake up, in the evening or in the morning when you wake up, and even the dentists recommend that too, subhanAllah, because when you haven't drank or eaten for a while, your mouth gets dry as well. Going to the salat because you're going to go face Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and you want to have like the best, the state of wudu, the clothing and the breath and everything, because the angels are around you. You don't want to come with like odor on your mouth. The Prophet ﷺ, even at his deathbed, about to die, he saw one of the companions walking in, and Aisha, she noticed that he was looking at the siwak. He wanted the siwak, and he could barely even talk, and she said, do you want the siwak? And the Prophet ﷺ indicated yes. So she got the siwak, and made it soft for him, and actually brushed his teeth for him, even right before he's about to pass away. So that shows you how much he was like inclined to have pleasant smelling all the time and clean teeth, and good presentation. And it's not wajib. You might find some scholars go to the wajib, but this hadith itself shows it's not wajib, because he said, if I did not fear burdening the ummah, I would have ordered them to do so. So it means he didn't order us. It's not a wajib, but it's just preferred and recommended, highly recommended. In these types of times, when you wake up in the morning, maybe before you go to sleep, if you haven't drinking or eaten, mouth is dry, you haven't talked, something like that, just to go and refresh it. And then to say at least 2 to 3 times a day, it's very good for you, right, for your teeth. And then he says, وَيُسْتَحَبْ فِي سَائِرِ الْأَوْقَاتِ إِلَّا لِلصَّائِمِ بَعْدَ الزَّوَالِ. And it's recommended in all other times, except for the fasting person after the sun has reached his zenith, after dhuhr basically. There's no direct proof for that, because the Prophet ﷺ, in the hadith it's general. He said, every salat. So there's no prohibition that we know of, or that I know of, that says you can't use a siwak while you're fasting after the zawal, right? Or some scholars say after the asr. I don't know of any proof. This is as long as you don't, intentionally digest something, it's okay. The Prophet ﷺ said that it's okay to clean the mouth. And that's the end of the chapter 4, Kitab or Bab al-Wudu. If you have any questions, yes.
I have multiple questions. As far as the intentions go, like say before you go make wudu, you just know, okay, you're gonna go pray. Would that be sufficient for intention, or like?
It's sufficient, but it's deficient as well. It's sufficient in the sense that you're doing wudu for you to be permissible to do as an act of worship, like salat or reading Quran. There's also like a dispute amongst the scholars in terms of like some would say that if you made wudu for a nafila or for reading Quran, is that sufficient for the fard? Right? Because the fard is a higher level. I'm not going to get deep into that, but just in general, always the way to get out of that anyways is to have niyyah of raf al-hadath, removing ritual impurities. Hadath means like breaking the wudu, whatever act required for the minor ablutions, like using the restroom, passing gas. Some scholars say deep sleep. We'll talk about those nawaqid wudu inshallah next couple of chapters. But basically you have the intention of lifting that off of you. So therefore any act of worship you can do after that. The stronger you focus on your attention, the better it is. But yeah, as long as you have an intention to to make yourself ready to do one of those acts of worship, then the scholars say that's sufficient, inshallah. But the best one is to have the intention that I'm lifting off the ritual impurities to be able to do an ibadah in general.
Okay. For the second question, I was gonna say, for reading the Quran, right? Like, is it a must to have wudu? I know we went over this, but I've heard otherwise as well. And like, how does it work? Say if you're going to read it on your phone and you're not touching the Quran physically.
So the Quran, or the Mus'haf in particular, is the book that's completely the Arabic language, without any other things. So even tafsir, if it's in Arabic, some scholars won't consider that the Mus'haf that they're talking about, because there's other foreign words in it, right? But the Quran by itself, the Mus'haf by itself, that's what the scholars are referring to. And some scholars say that you shouldn't touch it without a state of wudu, except for extreme situations in terms of like a person, like the kids in the hifz school, for example. It'll be hard for them to keep wudu for 6 hours a day and to go and make wudu every single time. Some exemptions are made for that. But they say also for the woman. But the phone doesn't count. Like the phone is different. It's not actually touching the Mus'haf. It's not a Mus'haf, right? It's something else. Use it for other things. Also, they say that if a woman wants, if she fears forgetting the Mus'haf. And nowadays we have like the phones and stuff, so it's easier for us, mashallah. But like in the past, they didn't have that. So they would say that she can wear gloves, just not to touch it directly. Yeah, so to be safe, if you're going to recite and touch the Mus'haf itself, like the physical Mus'haf, it's better to be in a state of tahara and wudu, right?
Same thing with dua.
Dua is not necessary, or dhikr is not necessary, but it's better. Like the more asbab that you take to getting your ibadah or dua accepted, the higher the chances, right? So you could just say, Allah, give me Jannah, right? Alhamdulillah. But say you made wudu and you called Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by His beautiful names and attributes, and you send the salatu wasalam ala Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, and you chose like the specific good times of the day to make the dua between the adhan and the iqama, or the last hour of Jum'ah, or certain times and then you made the dua. So you have more likelihood of the dua being accepted. So it's better to be in a state of tahara, but not recommended. Like you can, that's the good thing about our ummah, we can remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala any place, any time, without having to be in wudu if we don't have to. But being in a state of wudu is something that believers, لا يحافظ عليه إلا مؤمنا. The Prophet said that whoever maintains it all the time is except the mu'min, the believers. So it's a characteristic of the believer to be in a state of wudu as much as you can.
What?
So I was also gonna say, this is not related to what we spoke about, but say you're praying and your mind was elsewhere and you made sujood 3 times, like, or you forget how many times you made sujood or whatever. What's like the going about that?
So if you we'll talk about that when we get to the chapter of salah, inshallah. But quickly, if you make an increase or decrease in the salat, you have to, if you do it intentionally, the salat is invalid. If you do it unintentionally, you make it up through sujood al-sahw, right? So if you missed a rukn, you have to do that rukn. So you either have to make the whole rak'ah up, and then you pray sujood al-sahw after, right? If you add a rukn, intentionally you nullify your salat. But if you do it unintentionally, you do two sujood al-sahw at the end, and that will make up for that. And if you're doing it, like if you're in the middle of doing it, you stop immediately and go to the part you're supposed to be at. Right? So say for example, you prayed 2 rakats of Fajr, and then you're getting up for a third one, and then you realize, wait, I already prayed 2 rakats. You sit down immediately. You don't even have to say takbir al-ihram or anything else. You just sit down immediately, and then pray 2 sujood, for the extra movement that you've made.
So like, and my thing was like, say you have no idea.
Yeah.
If you did 1 or 5 or whatever it may be. So like, what would
The-
you do in that situation?
In terms of the rakats,
No, not rakas. Just like, say you're making sujood. Like you go twice and then you forget. Oh, was it my first one or second?
so you build upon what you're sure of. So like if you're sure you did 1, but you're not sure if you did 2, you build upon 1, and then you make an extra one. Same thing with the rak'ahs. Like if you're sure you prayed 3, but you're not sure if you prayed the 4th one or not, you count it as 3, and then you do an extra one just to make sure.
If you just had a snack, would you have to, and you about to pray, can you just go pray, or do you have to go rinse your mouth?
You can go and pray. Yeah, it's recommended to brush your teeth or rinse your mouth if you're able to do so, but it's not obligatory. Jazakumullah khair. Khalas, alhamdulillah. So next week we'll talk about the mash al-khuffayn, wiping over the socks or the leather socks in particular. And yeah, inshallah. I think we'll
Also,
listen.
quickly, I mean, I know we're gonna talk about it next week. I've heard over and I've heard under, like the sock, like you wipe over or you wipe under. I don't know if that's specific.
No, it's specific. You wipe over. That's a sunnah, yeah. Even there's a hadith that's attributed to Ali radiallahu anhu. He said that if the deen was by opinion, we would wipe under, but it's not by opinion basically, so we wipe over as the Prophet ﷺ taught us. طيب سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك جزاكم الله خيرا.